D. Mace Fingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service, and proudly presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. One day closer to Draft Day. So if you like the movie Draft Day with Kevin Costner and Jennifer Garner, and I think Dennis Leary is in that movie. Interesting cast.
Mm-hmm.
Cue up Draft Day. Get yourself in the mood. Now, if I recall correctly,
You're saying I should watch a movie to take. Is this a 2-hour movie? I assume I've never seen it.
I hope
To
it's
take
not
your
2
anxieties
hours.
about the draft away.
I hope it's not 2
But
hours.
you want me to watch a 2-hour movie and then watch 3 or 4 hours of one round on Thursday, and then I don't know how many hours the next couple of days. I mean, I can't do it.
First
I
of
can't
all,
do it.
the run time is 1 hour and 50 minutes.
Okay.
So it's not
So
quite 2
correct.
hours.
I just don't need it. I don't need it. There's too much already.
It's one of those, it's so bad.
I'm
it's good.
saturated.
It's one of those, it's so bad, it's good type of movies,
Okay.
which I think you would enjoy.
I do enjoy that type of movie sometimes. It's so bad it's good.
What
But I don't know. I can't invest. I can't invest any more time. I'm saturated with
What time
draft talk.
does the draft start on Thursday?
Well, there's probably 18 hours of pre-draft
Just-
coverage.
Right.
a bunch of fluff.
I turned on a channel the other day. No, look at the bottom left of your screen right here. Take a look at it.
55
Or up
minutes.
here. Look at it.
A countdown.
55 out. It's 55,
55
hours.
hours, yeah.
54 minutes and 27 seconds.
Exactly.
The countdown is on.
Round one of the 2025 draft starts on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, so 7 p.m. Central.
Why does it start so damn late? Because it's going to go
The
for
whole
about
thing is
5
stupid.
hours.
I can't stand it.
Like,
I can't.
does the actual draft start at 7 or does the talking start at 7?
There'll
Like,
be a lot of
like
talking.
the covering
commissioner will come
of the
up
draft.
and greet
Will it
everybody.
start
It's-
at 8 Eastern, 7 Central?
And then the Titans will be on the clock, and they'll have to talk about Cam Ward for a while. Then Cam Ward will be selected, and then they'll talk more about Cam Ward. Then they'll have to fill time before the Browns pick at 2, and so on and so forth.
If I'm the Titans, I'm just going up to the podium like, damn that. I know the NFL probably
Right.
want them to
Just-
like, okay,
just hand
no,
them the
just
card.
here's the card, commissioner, let's go.
Here's the jersey.
Yeah.
Here's the card.
Because then that speeds up the whole process. and they
Yeah,
don't
get
want
it
that.
moving.
They
Get it
don't want
moving. Let's
that.
get out of there.
It's a big
But
money.
we can't have that.
Nah, you can't speed it up. How long you think it lasts? I think last year we got out of there around 10, 11 o'clock. So it started at 7 and ends at 11, and it's only one round. That means there's too much damn talking in the beginning.
That's
We
right.
need a business.
And in the middle.
And
And
in
at
the
the end.
middle.
Yes.
And
It's too much
the
talking.
We need a business
watch a draft.
approach from these GMs. The Buffalo Sabres, to talk about the NHL for a moment. The Buffalo Sabres had a GM named Tim Murray. And what Tim Murray was famous for when he was making draft picks for the Sabres was the GMs would go up there and they would say, thank you to insert host city here for hosting the draft. Hello to our watch party at TGI Fridays or
right.
some weird chain restaurant. We are proud to select. He would just go up there and say the name. He'd just go up there and go, Willie Donick.
That's what I'm talking
And then
about.
that would be the end of it. That's
No
what
nonsense.
we need.
Yeah, that's what you need. Nobody needs the fluffing and the glad handing and
We don't
the
need to
patting
say
on the
thank you
backs.
to TGI
Yeah.
McScratchies. Thanks to all of our fans at TGI McScratchies for going to the draft
Would you
watch
go-
party.
Hey, now that's
Would-
a great place. Let's
Hold
not
on.
disrespect
Would you
TGI
go-
McScratchy.
Would you go to TGI Scratchies?
TGI McScratchies, which was from The
McScratchy.
Simpsons.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. TGI McScratchies. So
From
I wouldn't
Itchy and
go-
Scratchy Land.
I wouldn't go to that place.
All right. Well, if you're expecting a trade for the Titans, I think we've sort of
If you're
crossed.
expecting the trade, I'm going to tell you, you haven't been listening to the
You
shows.
haven't. But today, Ian Rappaport wanted to make sure that you knew that the Tennessee Titans won't be trading the number 1 pick. He tweeted earlier, quote, after months of speculation, the consensus around the league is that the Titans will stay at number 1 and pick rather than trade. Sources say, no surprise, decision made. There was real trade interest, but as one team said, quote, they never opened the door. All eyes on Cam
But
Ward.
what does that mean? They never opened the door.
They cracked it.
They looked through the peephole.
What's the
was there a
password?
slide? Was there a slide thing like? Shh, who is? It?
Is this
But
like
why-
Mr. Robinson's
So we can
neighborhood?
go
If
several
that's
different,
true. If that's true,
places
they
with
never
that.
opened the door.
Yeah.
I guess
Was-
I do want to.
No,
Did they at
was
least
somebody
listen?
knocking?
Was somebody knocking?
Yeah.
And did they at least say, Well, tell me what you'd like," or did they just act like they weren't home?
And my parents told me not to open the door for strangers.
Are
so
we?
Right.
Are we?
talk through the door?
Are we expecting it to be like Eddie Murphy, Mr. Robinson's neighborhood?
Who is it?
You know, is that what opening the door looks like?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Did nobody come up to the door that
Yeah.
had anything of note? I guess that's what I'm
Exactly.
asking. Or
Someone
were they
selling-
just saying, "Oh, we think this guy is the end all be all. We're not even listening to trades." I don't. We'll never know. I
Back in
guess.
the day, someone might come up to your door with a box full of candy bars or magazine subscriptions. Did Joe Shane walk up to the Titans door? Hello? Anybody there? Mike Borgonzi opens the door, cracks it just a little bit. He keeps the chain on the lock. He doesn't take the chain off the lock. He sticks his head out. I have a third round pick for you. Would you be interested? Just close the door. Not interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
close the door.
I'm sure it was.
No soliciting.
It was. If either your initial offer, whoever this GM was or person was that gave him the information, either your offer wasn't even to a point where I should open the door or extend this phone call, or you either felt that that deeply about Cam Ward and his ability to change this franchise. And this is what we've been talking about the whole time. Like at the beginning, if everyone in that building that's a part of the decision making in regards to drafting, if everybody's on the same page, then let's go with this guy. But if there's one or two people, then we need to reevaluate some things.
Let's just hope there's some logic there, because that statement of they never opened the door brings up the image, and we're all coming up with our images of flashing back to bad moments when somebody comes up to the door, because rarely when somebody comes up to the door that you don't know, is it something really good?
Nah, not really.
Right?
Mm.
But remember a few years ago, I guess it's been a while now, but I don't know, it was like 20 years ago, the Saints traded their whole draft
For Ricky Williams.
for Ricky Williams.
Yeah.
Like their whole draft. Do you remember this, Adam? Were you old enough to remember this? Were you a Saints fan at the time?
I was not.
So you had not really started to follow the Saints.
No, I did not at that point.
But I remember the reaction from Floyd Reese.
That was in 1999.
1999,
Yeah.
Floyd Reese, who used to do a weekly, but this was before I was on the station that was aligned with the Titans at the time. But Floyd Reese would come on with us from time to time. And he said, he said, if you're trading me your whole draft for one guy, I don't care who the guy is. He goes, he says, I am signing up for that. Like, I'm not even worried who that guy is.
Uh-huh.
So if somebody came up to your door and said, I'll trade you my whole draft for Cam Ward or for the first pick, like, then you would not be right to not open the door. They won't even open the door.
Yeah, but
So like, we don't know, like that implies that you're not even listening to the offer. Like,
you
you should
think-
listen to the offer.
Do you think one
right?
of the teams tried to sneak in through the doggy door? Pried it open.
Could you get your whole draft through the doggy door?
we had a milk chute back at my house. It's called a milk chute.
The milk chute. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so that's how we used to get in.
Remember
when we
the
didn't
milk
have
crates
key.
that you used to have at the front of your door,
Yeah,
where the
yeah.
milkman would? Remember milkmen? Do they still? Is that
We
still a
used to
thing?
use them as baskets. We used to use them as basketball goals.
Does milk still get delivered? Is
I
that a
don't know.
thing?
I
No.
don't think so.
I'm sure. I mean,
Maybe in
Nick,
some
Nick could be able to
Farm
tell us.
towns.
What
Maybe
a time
still?
it used to be, where milk was just delivered to your door.
I do remember those days.
I don't want that anymore.
Well, speaking of what that trade could have been,
Mhm.
Adam Schefter reported the other day, quote, a team looking for more firepower on Friday night will be the Titans, who, in a bit of irony, don't have a third-round pick, thanks to their own GM, Mike Borgonzi. Just over a year ago, Borgonzi was the assistant GM for the Chiefs and the central figure in the trade that sent cornerback L'Jarius Sneed from Kansas City to Tennessee in exchange for a 2025 third-round pick. Now Borgonzi has been hired to help build up the Titans roster. Borgonzi turned down the Giants' overtures to trade up to number 1 in a package of picks that would have included a 3rd-round pick this year. Now he'll have to see if he can find a way back into that round. So Adam Schefter is reporting that the Titans turned down the Giants' overtures to trade up to number 1 in a package of picks that would have included a 3rd-round pick. I need more information.
Right.
Was it just
included?
I'll give you our 1st-round pick, so you'll move from 1 to 3, and I'll give you a 3rd-round pick.
Exactly.
Then I understand the Titans not opening up the door.
Right. Then you don't open the door.
You left it
That's
very
not enough.
vague. That was very vague. You gave us nothing but a 3rd-round pick. So was it a 2nd and a 3rd? Was it just a swapping of the pick and I give you a 3rd this year? That's not. I don't care who's in the draft. I don't think that's enough to try to get the 1st pick in this year's draft. Now, I do agree with sort of the 3rd-round pick. They need to find a way to get back into the 3rd round. We've talked a lot about what they're going to do with the 1st pick in the draft and who it's going to be. And it seems like right now it's going to be Cam Ward. And there's nothing out there that's going to sort of dispute that. But moving forward, how do they then get back in the 3rd round? Because when you talk about wanting a certain amount of picks within, a certain amount of years, you got to find a way to get back into those critical rounds. And I'm not talking, listen, you can find a diamond in the rough in the 6th and the 7th and possibly, in the 5th. You find those guys here and there. I get it. But those critical rounds, those 1 through 4s, man, you got to find new players. And the Titans are not in a position to not have a pick in a high-valued round. Listen, every round to me, 1 through 7, because I know how hard it is to get in this league. But when you're talking about guys that make impacts early, you're looking at rounds 1, 2, and 3, and you want to try to get back into that 3rd round, which they're not in right now.
Chris at Lewisburg on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, never open the door means that no team was willing to give up next year's 1st-round pick.
Yeah.
Another texter says, remember, each team has a max of 10 minutes to pick. That's a minimum of 6 teams per hour, so 5 hours is about right in terms of the length of the draft.
And it's just a bunch of just
Can we watch the draft on 1.5 speed like you listen to your favorite podcast?
I wouldn't even do
wish.
that. I wouldn't do that. I will follow the picks, but I'll be watching other games. I cannot stand all of the rigmarole, the talking, the interviews with the family. Yeah. The only time I watched it was when the shutdown had happened in 2020. And I was just so glad to have something on TV that was a current event, because I had watched all the old games, the classic games that they were showing. They were trying to come up with anything like
the Lakers,
the 30 for 30, the Last Dance.
Bulls, yeah.
That I actually watched. But other than that, I follow the draft. I do not watch the draft from start to finish like some. I can't do it.
Well, we will be watching the 1st round because we got to do the show.
I know
at Twin Peaks, so we will be there. This upcoming Thursday.
I think that's more engaging to me. I hope people listen to that because it's from the Titans' perspective.
Yes,
I think I like that. But from the league perspective, like the Bengals' 1st pick and his family that's there and everything, I don't.
In the way that ESPN does it, and they're doing it again this year, is you can watch the draft on ESPN. You can also watch the draft on ABC. And ESPN's presentation will focus on the specific NFL team and the draftees' on-field performance, highlighting their athletic accolades and impact on the field. On ABC, the presentation will emphasize storytelling and the draftees' road to the NFL draft, highlighting their lesser-known stories. So if you're looking more for the feel-good, feature story type of NFL draft coverage, watch ABC. If you're looking for the nuts and bolts of each player, each team, you watch ESPN.
But both of them will run
simultaneously.
Of time. So if one lasts for 4 hours, the other one would last for 4 hours.
The Pat McAfee show is also doing a simulcast as well, I think.
It's just saturating us, making sure we get it from every angle.
You're covered.
Football everywhere.
Smothered and covered, like your favorite thing at Waffle House. Smothered and covered by NFL coverage. But of course, if it were up to me and I could recommend to you how you should listen to NFL draft coverage, you should do it by listening to our NFL draft coverage.
That's what I would
recommend.
recommend.
NFL draft coverage on the Game Nashville Sports Network. We will be broadcasting live from Twin Peaks in Madison on Thursday and Friday from Boomba's Pizza and Watch Bar in East Nashville. Coverage begins at 6 o'clock each day, presented by Hardy's Parman Tractor and Equipment, Twin Peaks, Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, Shane Co., and Professional Home Improvements. On Thursday, it will be Jared Stillman, Derek Mason, Chris Sanders, and Trevor Maddich. On Friday, it will be Chase McCabe, Joe Rexroad, and Chris Sanders. So Chris Sanders pulling double duty. That's why he's the best in the business. 615-737-1025. Remember yesterday I did the Cam Ward temperature check? We're going to continue to do that through Thursday. So your feelings on Cam Ward and the Titans expecting to take Cam Ward as we approach the first round of the draft. We will take your Cam Ward temperature checks throughout the show all week long at 615-737-1025. But we referenced a report from Adam Schefter. He had another report that I found to be interesting. Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated also has his annual quarterback class evaluation. We'll talk about what the two of them said, what their sources said as well. Coming up next, 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game.
Dum, da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum. Da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum.
Bum, bum. This is gonna feel real good, alright? Most dope. Everybody, please put a thumb in the air.
D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Knock, knock. Shout out Mac Miller.
There we go.
Nobody's opening the
I
door.
never even opened the door.
They're knocking. Nobody's opening the door. According to Ian Rappaport, he said there was real trade interest in the number 1 overall pick, but as one team said, quote, they never opened the door. Knock, knock. No one's here. No one's home.
Or did you do, because I've seen this done before, where you go up to the door and it's like, knock on the door, and your mom's sitting back there. It's like, knock on that door, to get somebody to come because you really don't want to go there. Knock on that door. And they do like this.
Kind of a
Knock on that door harder. So
Very tentative.
they may have knocked, but it may have just
yeah, it was
been
a soft knock.
Yeah, soft
Yeah,
knock.
like-
Yeah, on a big wooden
Not an
door.
urgent knock. Like, you gotta let me in. Open the door.
So that's what it could have been.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But either way, they never opened the door.
Mhm.
Could they still in the next 2 days
I
open
think
the
they
door?
can. Yeah.
Like it
In
talked
theory,
like they
yes.
talk as if the window's gone. Like nobody could.
Let's
go up
not
to the
cross
door.
windows and doors here.
Yeah.
We're talking about doors.
Right.
Someone peering in through the window.
You could still walk up the walkway to the door. You've got 55 hours, 33 minutes, and 7 seconds. It says right there.
What if your
Countdown to
front
draft.
door? What if your front door has a window, right? So you kind of stand on your tiptoes and look inside, see if anybody's home.
Yeah. It could still happen in theory. So why is Ian putting that out there now? It's not over.
It's over. It's over.
But some more
They're
reporting from Adam Schefter about the number 1 overall pick and such. He says, quote, at least one team does not have a first round grade on any of the quarterbacks in this draft. The general manager of another team said there are, quote unquote, no surefire quarterback solutions. And the top rated passer in this class, Ward, would be the 7th rated passer in last year's class. Quote, and I don't think it's close. That GM added. Some teams and prognosticators have predicted 4 quarterbacks to go in round 1, but there are smart people around the league who believe there might only be 1 or 2 who go in the top 32 picks. So that is Adam Schefter. At least one team does not have a first round grade on any of the quarterbacks. There are 32 teams in the NFL draft. So I don't know what the percentage is, 1 over 32. I'm not
That's
great
not a
at that
good
math.
percentage.
I think at this point we've got a pretty good gauge of where Cam Ward falls in the evaluation. I don't think any of this is surprising, right?
Yeah, but when they're talking about Cam Ward and they're comparing him to last year's draft, are you comparing where he was last year had he come out, or are you comparing who he is now as a quarterback compared to those guys?
Well,
at
last
the moment?
year,
Because a few of those guys were not predicted to be top 15 picks.
well, this is a big part of the story that I'm sure ABC has the feel good stories.
ABC
Yeah.
has the feel good stories. News too.
Last year, he famously, I guess, got a gauge. Cam
Yeah,
Ward
it's a
did,
third
and they
round.
said he's a 3rd day pick.
Yeah,
Like
third
he's
day, yeah.
not really on the radar.
Mhm.
And he's gone from that to the 1st overall pick. So it clearly wasn't where he was last year. I think they're saying where he is now, he would have fallen. I was reading, somewhere around where Michael Penix went, Bo Nix went later 1st round.
They all
And
went
probably-
they were all top 12 picks. All of them. I think Bo Nix was the last pick.
Bo Nix, where was Bo Nix pick? I thought he was more in the 20s, wasn't he?
Denver had a
little lower?
higher. I thought Denver had a top 15 pick. I could be wrong on this,
Hold, please.
but I thought all
So
the
they were
quarterbacks-
ranking him 6th or
Number
7th.
12. He
Yeah,
was 12.
12,
overall.
okay.
all those quarterbacks are drafted within the first 12 picks. So Cam Ward still would have been a 1st round pick last year. And probably realistically, if the production was like it is this year and you saw the development like he did from last year to this year, he may go ahead of Michael Penix. He may go ahead of Bo Nix. If you're looking at, we're just looking at it based upon, or some people are looking at it based upon who he is in this draft compared to the quarterbacks
Right.
in this draft, as opposed to, taking that whole draft class and dumping it in this year's draft. Where would he have then sort of filtered himself out as? I think he would have been above Michael Penix and Bo Nix.
So Albert Breer wrote his annual story breaking down the quarterback class at sportsillustrated.com. The headline, NFL Draft 2025 or 2025 NFL Draft, : this year's quarterback class is, quote, a lot like 2022. And he writes, as we break the seal on my annual story breaking down the quarterback class, this baseline has to come first. We're closer to the class of 2022 this year than we are either of the past 2 years at the most important position on the field. From one AFC assistant coach, quote, I don't think the class is very good. I think it's a lot like the 2022 class, with maybe the exception of Cam Ward. But he's going to go first overall. And if you put him in last year's class, he's 6th or 7th overall for me. And that's the company line we're hearing from.
6th or 7th among the quarterbacks? Is that
that's
he
a
was
good
saying?
question. It's unclear. I believe he's talking about the quarterbacks. He's 6th or 7th. Well, actually,
I think he's talking about among, because it was a deep quarterback class last year.
right. Breer put overall in brackets, so he added that. But he's going to go first overall. And if you put him in last year's class, he's 6th or 7th overall for me. I'm going to assume he means among the quarterbacks.
Think that's what he means, because there's
Yeah.
more perspective on that. I honestly, the Breer article, and I think Breer does a really good job with who he's able to talk to. He's got good contacts around the league. There's not a lot of BS. I don't think Albert Breer's out there to try to grab headlines with these eye-popping takes or whatever. So I value what he writes. I think he had some good intel, good perspective, the question marks of Ward. But I think overall, people like Ward. It's just a matter of him being worth the first pick. It's not perfect, but I think people like Cam Ward.
I think one thing we've talked about in the past with Cam Ward is this idea that he's sort of being dragged down by the overall quality of the quarterback class. As you said, Willie, I think a lot of people like Cam Ward, but when you look at the rest of the class, I think there is a perception that, hey, he only looks this good because he's being compared to Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe and so on and so forth. So I think that is working against Cam Ward. By the way, the traits comp that Albert Breer has for Cam Ward in this article on SI.com is a quote-unquote sawed-off Ben Roethlisberger. And Ben Roethlisberger, I have seen that comparison a couple of times. Some of the insight that Breer got on Cam Ward from one AFC coordinator, quote, he's the best one of the quarterbacks. He has great arm talent, really good accuracy, can escape. He's got a quick release. He can throw from different arm angles. To me, it's clear. Or that was an NFC coordinator. An AFC coordinator says, to me, it's clear. I don't think it's that hard. He plays with common presence, makes all the throws, keeps his eyes downfield. He's clearly the best one in this class. His biggest strength is his demeanor. He's always under control. I just think he's got the ability to do it more than the other guys. He doesn't need space to generate power, and he can make every throw you need him to make. He's got the athleticism to keep plays alive, but runs to throw. It's like Deshaun Watson when he was playing well, though Deshaun was more of a runner. So that was one AFC coordinator talking about Cam Ward. The first quote, he's the best one. He has great arm talent, really good accuracy, can escape, quick release, can throw from different arm angles. That was an NFC coordinator. But you're hearing a lot of those sorts of things about Cam Ward. Another thing that stood out to me, Derek, and Breer mentioned this, that one of the questions he's had in the offseason about Cam Ward is how a guy who was seen as a day 3 prospect a year ago returned to college football because of it, has risen from day 3 prospect to number 1 overall pick. And Breer writes, one is the makeup of the class, which we just addressed. He goes, another piece of it is that what had shown up in flashes over Ward's time at Incarnate Word in Washington State became much more consistent with a better team around him at Miami. And what's intriguing, despite 5 years of tape, is that there's still rawness you have to work through that indicates he still has untapped potential.
Well, it's all about potential. And whether he would have been the 5th, 6th, or 7th quarterback taken last year, compared to where he's at now. I think the young man, because I'm listening to, you read about these two different scouts from their respective divisions, and what they're saying is the things that you want in a franchise quarterback. All the things that they listed are the things that you want in your franchise quarterback. Now, to me, it doesn't matter where you take him, just take him. If you believe that he's a franchise guy,
You've been
and
consistent with that all
yeah,
along.
just take him. And because again, you don't. Everybody talk. They're talking about, well, last year he would have been this. How did he rise up? How can a guy, like you said, Adam? How can a guy go from third day to now considered, the number one guy in the draft? And maybe he's not the number one prospect, but he's going number one. Well, it happens because one, possibly the depth in the draft. Two, the team drafting at the top. And then three, I think it's development. You watch this guy develop at every level. Jaden Daniels wasn't on nobody's on radar in regards to a number 2 pick, let alone a first round pick, let alone a number 2 pick last year before his season. But what did he do? Essentially he and Joe Burrow did what Cam Ward did, minus what Cam Ward didn't win the Heisman, but those guys did. They came from good programs. They were relative unknowns, and in the matter of 1 year or two, they went from unknowns to number 1 picks or number 2 picks in the draft. Let's not act as if that doesn't happen. We're trying to make this, well, how did he become, last year he was a third day 3 pick, but now all of a sudden, well, yes, there are several factors in it, but one of the main factors is you got to see the development of the player.
Yeah, there's college basketball and college sports in general.
Mhm.
One thing we've learned from the transfer portal, with all the madness of it and the things that we talk about and the things that aren't really nice about it, it shows you that you can be a lower recruited player, and then a couple years later, you are kicking butt at the highest level of college sports. I mean, look no further than what Tennessee's done on the basketball front the last couple years with Lanier and Connect. Those guys were low recruits out of high school. They were unbelievably good players for a great team the last couple years.
615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction to all of this about Cam Ward as we approach, thankfully, the first round of the NFL draft on Thursday. But coming up next, I was listening to Field Yates and Mel Kiper Jr. discuss the draft, and Field Yates mentioned something that led me to a question that I want to ask Willie and Derek and all of you as well. 615-737-1025. Also, be sure to be listening in the next segment because I do have a giveaway. So keep it locked in here. We'll get right back to it coming up next. Willie Dunnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Let's tell you about League Company. If you're sitting in your office right now and going, boy, I cannot wait to watch all 5 hours of the draft on Thursday night, but I got to get this maintenance thing taken care of. It's been weighing on me, and I just have been procrastinating. I got to get this taken care of. Well, League Company is there for you. You don't even have to pick up the phone if you don't want to. You can make an online appointment, leaguecompany.com. That goes for something at your home or at your business. Either one, general maintenance, they've got that department at Lee Company. They'll take care of you. LeeCompany.com. Or if you want to go phone style, call 615-567-1000. That's 615-567-1000. Of course, that's just the tip of the iceberg. They've got you covered with your air conditioning, your plumbing, your electric, and of course the heating in the winter. They've got a year-round plan called the home maintenance plan to where you don't even have to be calling. They'll be getting in touch with you for those annual checkups that are very, very proactive. You'll feel good about how it runs your house. So they've got it all covered for you. Lee Company's been in business since 1944, proud sponsor of our station and our coverage of the Nashville Predators.
I think the only player. So I think that the Titans are justified in their confidence in Cam Ward, especially as I mentioned, given the context of how their offseason has unfolded to this point. I believe, and this is to not discredit Abdul Carter at all, I believe the only player in this draft who we're reasonably talking about as the number one overall pick, which is really three guys: Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, that could make Tennessee rue this decision 3, 4, 5 years from now, is Travis Hunter for this reason. If Abdul Carter hits his peak value, Greeny, we're talking about a great, great player, right? A great pass rusher. There are quite a few of those, though, right? The NFL leader in sacks last year, Trey Hendrickson, did not make the playoffs, not because it was his fault, but right, the influence of the NFL's leading sacker is not as significant as the NFL's influence of a top 10 quarterback. But if Travis Hunter emerges and becomes a Pro Bowler on one side of the ball and a solid starter on the other, I mean, we haven't seen that in my lifetime in the NFL. So that's the only player that 5 years from now, we could be looking back at Tennessee and saying, Cam Ward's fine, but not special. And Travis Hunter is special on, call it 1.5 sides of the ball. That being said, I think knowing everything that we know, where Tennessee is at right now, and the fact that this is a team where they could have opted for patience and said, we're just going to kick the can on quarterback and either take Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, or trade down and get a bunch of picks. The fact that they made their decision to stay at number one, I'm fine with Cam Ward. And again, it's the only thing that we know 3 days out is an absolute stone cold lock.
That was Field Yates on ESPN, an absolute stone cold lock that the Titans are taking Cam Ward. But an interesting conversation preceding that statement about which draft prospect could make the Titans regret drafting Cam Ward one day. He says Travis Hunter. To me, as Field Yates said in that clip, there are really only 2 other prospects who are considered worthy of being the number 1 overall pick, other than Cam Ward. Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. And when you look at all of these big boards that we've been looking at over these past few weeks and months, I pulled up Dane Brugler's from the other day. He has Cam Ward as the 13th rated prospect out of 300. He has Travis Hunter number 1 and Abdul Carter, even with the injury concerns, number 2. So I'm going to ask the two of you the same question that Field Yates threw out there. But before we do that, Bob is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Bob, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, yeah, y'all talking about Ward and everything, and of course, quarterback's a crapshoot. It's funny that you brought up Deshaun Watson, because that's the person I kept thinking about that fell down the draft that no one had confidence in, and then, of course, for all those legal problems, he was a heck of a quarterback while he was at Houston. And I'm kind of thinking Ward may fall in the same thing, that a lot of people overlooking him. I don't know if y'all read that article someone posted where they actually measured his breathing and everything during stress situations, and his rhythm didn't go up at all. He was so calm and everything. I read that yesterday. I just thought it was interesting, but he just kind of reminds me of Deshaun, where I think he's going to be a lot better than people originally thought.
Thank you for the call, Bob. And he's
I have not seen it. What is
he's
this article?
referencing an article, which we will talk about. He is referencing a really good feature story about Cam Ward that was written by Adam Kilgore of the Washington Post. And we're going to talk about that. So I don't want to give that away yet.
Okay.
But that is the article that Bob is referring to.
It's as he said that, I hadn't heard of this study. We're going to talk about it, but we haven't had any discussion about the Wonderlic, not one time.
No.
Or the, what was it, the S2?
The S2 was the
No.
new cutting edge one. That seems to have not been the trendy thing to talk about. Do they even still do those?
Listen, it probably doesn't matter. They found out that it really don't matter.
I guess that's the conclusion.
You know,
or at
'cause
least the people who cover the draft aren't
Exactly.
trying to uncover that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Listen, when you have the number 1 pick, because I can understand Phil Yates saying the one guy that can make the Titans, regret not drafting him would be Travis Hunter. I think anybody within that top 10, because you have the first pick in the draft, and you're talking about more than likely 10 players that people have across their board as top 15 players. I would probably, if you put all the teams together, their top 10 sort of resembles their top 15 in the sense with players. Anybody that they don't draft, outside of Cam Ward, if Cam Ward just ends up being okay, if Abdul Carter ends up being an all-pro, if Genty ends up, because y'all needed a running back, Pollard wasn't really the answer. He was aging. There's always going to be, well, man, you should have drafted. We still get on the Detroit Pistons. When they skip Carmelo Anthony, they skip Bosch.
Darko.
Yeah, and they drafted Darko Milicic.
Yep.
Milicic. And with the second pick, people still talk about that to this day. Why? Because Milicic was a true bust.
Mhm.
with the Pistons, and those guys end up having really good careers.
Well, to be fair, I hear what you're saying about Ashton Genty, for example.
Mm.
I think there are people who study this process that think that Ashton Genty is the best athlete in this class. But would the Titans realistically take Ashton Genty with the number 1 overall pick?
But it's like even moving down, like position. If you don't do anything, if you stay with the number 1 pick, you don't move, you don't try to facilitate a trade, moving down some picks. If you stay with that pick and you draft Cam Ward and he's just good, and those other guys that you had the potential to draft either the number 1 pick or move down to the number 3 pick or the number 7 pick, then people are gonna say it was you had your chance. You should have did it. They're always going to then blame you because why? You have the number 1 pick.
So let me ask Willie this question. Which prospect is likeliest to make the Titans rue the decision, as Field Yates said? Which prospect is likeliest to make the Titans rue the decision of drafting Cam Ward potentially? Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? Because those are the only 2 prospects I think that would be going number 1 if not for Cam Ward.
I buy Field Yates's argument on Travis Hunter if it all hits the way some believe it could,
Because you're getting
that he
production
is
on
the
both sides
rare
of the
guy
ball.
who can do something. What I found interesting about this whole process with Hunter, because D Mace, for example, I was in Ohio last week, as you guys know, and the Browns have the 2nd pick, right? So my family up there, they're all way in on the Browns. They're a Browns family, so they have seen a lot of tough days, a lot of tough Sundays,
Mhm.
right?
So
I told them your argument about Hunter, that you think that he is a corner, an every down corner,
Mhm.
and then spotted as a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That's how you think he's best used.
yes.
What I found interesting was my aunt and uncle, who were talking about this. They've been reading up and
Mhm.
they're huge fans. They think the Browns intend to have him be a wide receiver that is more spotted as a defensive back. And
Well-
I've been reading on this, and there do seem to be some different ideas on what's the best way to utilize him.
Because Cleveland don't necessarily need him to be they have a good defense. They have a good
Yes.
secondary. They don't have playmakers on the offensive side of the ball at the wide receiver position. They don't have enough. They traded away Amari Cooper last year. I think it was last year, the year before, and they got some players, but I don't think they need that explosive guy. So I can see a team like Cleveland drafting him and saying, you know what, we're going to make you our primary receiver, but put you on the defensive side of the ball every now and then. I would think it would be easier to make him your defensive guy and sprinkle him in the offense rather than try to do it the other way around.
And I heard of course, I think a defensive coach might have one perspective,
Yeah.
and an offensive coach might make the argument on the opposite side. But one perspective I heard when I was reading about this, and I can't remember where I was reading it. I think it was The Athletic, but it might have been Dane Brugler's thing.
The beast.
Yes, thank you.
That's how we got to refer to
teed
it
you up
as,
for that
just
one.
like you say it.
But he said it's like a pitcher. Like when you're a defensive back and you're a pitcher, it's like a starting pitcher that you're going to give up a couple hits. You're going to give up a catch, but you learn the hitters. You learn how they're trying to go at you, and you're going to be effective over the course of the game. So it's hard to just spot in as a defensive back. We just go in there cold for a few plays. It's not as easy to excel. The other thing that concerns me about Hunter, if you're going for the home run, like rue the day you didn't take this guy. Bo Jackson, like Deion Sanders is such an exception because he played for so long, but he had plenty of injury issues, and he rarely was a both sides of the ball in one season.
Yes, he only
kinda
had
guy.
that one season.
So if
It
he
was
does it,
subpar.
His impact on the offensive side
Yeah,
of the ball has
wasn't-
been
yeah.
overstated.
Right,
Exactly.
right. And
he did it.
and it's confused with his special teams prowess,
Yes.
which was off the charts.
Absolutely.
Probably the best ever punt
Mhm.
returner, probably. And Hunter doesn't seem to be in the mix as a punt returner. So I would think that even if he does it, if he did it for 3 years, that would be a long time before your body, that would be amazing if he pulled that off. But the likelihood, the probability that you can do that, I would think your body would wear down. It would be just hard for you for a long, long period of time to be what Field Yates just said was you've got an all-pro on one side of the ball and you've got a half a starter on the other side. How long is the window realistically to do that?
615-737-1025. So let's ask the question that Field Yates was discussing there. Which draft prospect is likeliest to make the Titans regret drafting Cam Ward at number 1 overall? Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? Or if there's another prospect, you can throw his name in there as well. 615-737-1025. I said I had a giveaway, so let's do it right now. Be caller number 2 at 615-737-1025, and you will win a family 4-pack of tickets to see the Nashville Sounds take on the Durham Bulls at First Horizon Park this Thursday. First pitch is at 6:35. Caller number 2, you will win a family 4-pack of tickets to see the Sounds take on the Durham Bulls. And speaking of the Sounds, you can tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Sounds take on those Durham Bulls at First Horizon Park. Pre-game begins at 6:20, and the first pitch is at 6:35. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan is presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. And we are proudly presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Our question, which draft prospect is likeliest to make the Titans regret drafting Cam Ward? Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? Or if you have another one, you can throw that out there too. Adam from Portland has been waiting patiently on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
I think when we look back, dude, we're going to have to look at it like in its whole total picture, which is that Abdul Carter had a red flag with medical. The thing about Travis Hunter, he has 0 red flags. Like, the only thing I could possibly think is if he gets hurt, you lose 2 players. Like, that's the only thing. But he's twitchy, special. Everything about him's awesome. Like, everywhere he's been amazing. So he's the only one I could think of, dude. Like, and just to kind of throw this out there with Cam, I'm not saying that we shouldn't draft Cam. I'm saying that if they're making these comparisons of it's Steve McNair coming out of Alcorn State, Steve got to sit. This dude's going to be thrust right into that terrible offense from last year. So I really worry about Cam in that regard. I think he could make us regret just because we're going to have to play him early. But if just asking from the top prospects, I think Travis Hunter is the only good answer, man.
Thanks for the call, Adam. And I want to play a clip from the Rich Eisen show because Rich Eisen was talking about this as well. And in the clip, he's referring to Daniel Jeremiah's top 150 prospects list over at NFL.com. He has Travis Hunter, Daniel Jeremiah does, as the number 1 ranked prospect. He has Abdul Carter, number 2. He has Cam Ward, number 8. This was Rich Eisen talking about this same question.
Daniel, what he does, he has a mock draft on Wednesday night on NFL Network. Charles Davis and Daniel Jeremiah honcho that one Wednesday night. But the Monday of draft weeks, Daniel, reveals the top 150 players on his draft board. This, I would proffer to say, is proprietary information that Daniel shares that is no question of interest to all 32 draft rooms. They are very, like, DJ is in the know and his opinion is respected. And he's got Travis Hunter, number 1 on his draft board.
Mm-hmm. He should.
Which only adds to the question, is Cam Ward a first overall pick? And it's just tough for people to wrap their minds around the fact that a kid who went from Incarnate Word to Washington State to the U, where he showed a remarkable set of skills, physical, mental, the ticker inside, the heart. How many times do you see Michael Irvin on his hands and knees on the sidelines of a Miami game, staring at the scoreboard, knowing that this thing is over, and then Cam Ward just pulled it out of the rabbit hole
far too many times to count this year.
So, but a lot of people just cannot wrap their arms around Cam Ward being in the surefire first overall pick quarterback position like Andrew Luck or Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams, right?
Joe Burrow, Cam Newton.
Sure.
Yeah.
They just can't wrap their arms around it.
That was Rich Eisen having basically the same conversation. It really does seem like a lot of people are struggling, to use Rich Eisen's words there, struggle to wrap their arms around the idea of Cam Ward being the number 1 overall pick.
And I don't understand it. Because again, I go back to, and I'm not saying that they are the same athlete or the same quarterback, but this notion that you can't wrap your brain around. If you've been around this game long enough, you can wrap your brain around it. You can understand it. Even the most seasoned, GM or administrative guy or girl, if you've been the most seasoned ones, they'll tell you that, listen, these things happen where a guy goes from being no one heard of him to all of a sudden he's at the top of the draft or in the mix to be at the top of the draft. Again, I go back to Jaden Daniels and Cape in Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, nobody had him on this list to be the number 1 pick. He had 16 touchdowns and 5 interceptions.
He was the backup at Ohio State.
2,800
out.
yards, 57% of his passes. He wasn't even completing 60% of his passes at LSU his first year. He was a relative unknown the 2 years prior to that, 16 and 17, where he played sparingly at Ohio State. So again, the notion that, oh, I can't believe this is happening. Like, oh my goodness, a guy go from, being a relative unknown to all of a sudden, he was a known commodity. He just wasn't known to be the number one pick. Joe Burrow was a known commodity, but no one thought he would be the number one pick. Jaden Daniels was a known commodity, but no one thought he would be the second pick in the NFL draft the year prior to them coming out.
Willie, let me throw some numbers at you. This is according to Dan Orlovsky on Twitter. By QBR, Cam Ward was the best quarterback in the nation last season against a four-man rush, 87.3. When you don't get pressure, 93.9. Against your zone, 90.9. And on third down, 95.1. I understand why people, Titans fans specifically, are nervous about the idea of the Titans taking Cam Ward because he does not profile, as Rich Eisen said there, as that surefire, can't miss, G-word type of player at the number one pick in the draft. But again, I feel like we're selling Cam Ward short a little bit. Do I know that Cam Ward is going to be him? No, of course I don't know that. But I do think, as I said earlier, the relative lack of enthusiasm for this class is it seems to be dragging Cam Ward down.
And I think there's fear in general. When you have the first pick, it means your team hasn't had success. Your fans are skeptical. You've made wrong decisions to get to this point. They've dipped. They're not too far removed from a team that had a number one seed going into the playoffs. So you're still getting over the heartbreak of not winning in that window. So everybody's down. Everybody is skeptical. Everybody's like, oh, they're not going to get it right. And so there's probably fear of not taking him. There'd be a lot of people calling into the show Friday if they didn't take Cam Ward, that they just missed out on the quarterback. They don't have the quarterback. They didn't take him. The thing I keep coming back to, and I do think there's a lot of good data on Cam Ward with the numbers you just pointed out. Tim Hasselbeck said high floor. There's something to be said for that. And so I'm okay with it. I would love in a perfect world for there to be more leverage there where you could get a ton of picks.
They never opened the door. The door was never opened
for whatever reasons, right? And the thing, and I would love to get your take on something with Hunter that you mentioned during the break, Derek, because if you're chasing the Hunter dream of the home run, and look,
are you saying that you're hunting the hunter?
Yes,
you're hunting the hunter.
The hunt for the home run, rue the day. It's the home run. He is a star on both sides of the ball. He's something that's never been seen before. A true G word, right? That's what the Browns would dream of.
Yes.
If they take him second. Nothing ever goes wrong for the Browns. You think the Titans fans are cynical, skeptical? How about being a Browns fan for 30 years?
Let's read some of our text before Derek answers that question. One texter says, in terms of which prospect is likeliest to make the Titans regret drafting Cam Ward at number one. One texter says, it's easily Travis Hunter. Number one player in the country during high school, best player in the country during college. He's been the best player in the country his whole life. He's Darrelle Revis with Richard Sherman's build. Browns could ruin him by playing him primarily a wide receiver. Another texter says, has to be Hunter. If Carter is Lawrence Taylor, I could stomach it because the Titans have been burned by drafting injured players too much recently.
Okay, so give me you made an interesting perspective. Travis Hunter definitely, especially being coached by Deion Sanders, taught the ways of the game from Deion Sanders, understands the business part of the game. But share what you shared with me about the approach of being a wide receiver and being a corner when it comes to contracts in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he understands the leverages with the wide receivers. The top wide receiver right now is making $40 million. Okay, the top corner is making 30, and he just got his money, Stingley. And obviously it'll be going up, but what else will be going up? The money that the wide receiver is making. that's a $10 million in it. If you're talking the low end, there are more 40 and 30 million dollar per year wide receivers than there are defensive backs. I'm just talking about corners. There's more of those guys. So if I'm coming out, if I'm Travis Hunter, and I put up the numbers in college, and he's just he's just an amazing athlete. What I am going to do is I'm going to say I want to play wide receiver, because at the end of the day, I make more money. There's more of an impact, there's more notoriety, and there's more money at the wide receiver position. And I can be a pseudo defensive back. I can be a third defensive back. If indeed that's the route that he's choosing to go, am I drafting him then number one? No, I'm not drafting him number one based upon his abilities as a wide receiver, because to me, I can go out and get 2 or 3 other wide receivers that would probably give me the same thing that Travis has given me, and maybe even more when you're talking about production. So if I'm drafting him as a wide receiver, I'm not drafting him at number one. If I'm drafting him as a DB, I'm not drafting him number one, because there are other defensive backs out there that would push him just for who's the top defensive back out there. So people, he deserves to be the number one pick. Why? Because he's the best player in the draft. He can play both sides. It's easier said than done when you say Deion Sanders, and people make this mistake, and no one sat there and disputed it, and they should have. Deion Sanders will go down as probably the greatest, or he already is, the greatest defensive back and one of the greatest punt returners ever in this game. But make no mistake, Deion Sanders didn't play wide receiver. He was the 4th wide receiver, or the 3rd or 4th wide receiver on their team, and he came in spot duties. He wasn't a every down starter on both sides of the ball. It's tough to do that. Now, if Travis wants to play defensive back, you let him play number one defense, and then you can be our 4th wide receiver. But I can't expect him to be our 1 and 2, and then double that on the defensive side of the ball as well. But the notion is, Deion Sanders did it. He didn't do it to the capacity that Travis Hunter is hoping to do.
We have a vote, by the way, for Abdul Carter, which I did not think we would get. One texter says both Hunter and Ward were solid at best when playing the elite teams in college football. Both had weaker schedules. Carter excelled when the lights were brightest, even when hurt.
No, noteworthy, without a doubt. And Carter has probably, if he were completely healthy, I think the discussion might be different around Carter. But I think in the short term, people are, the health, the foot, all of that. One more point on doing something that hasn't been done.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening in baseball right now? You've got Shohei Ohtani, who's doing things that have never, ever been done by anybody in the history of the game. That's beyond generational, right? This is historic. But the unique thing about Ohtani is just knowing how hard it is for him to excel as a pitcher and as a hitter at the same time. That has happened for short periods, but he's also hurt his arm.
Mm-hmm.
The thing for that's unique is he can fall back on being an incredible hitter, incredible offensive player, even if he's not pitching. Now, later this season, he's going to try to resume pitching. And remember, this is a guy that's doing things that have never been done. But in football, if you get hurt on one side of the ball, you can't play on the other side of the ball.
One texter, Dustin from Hopkinsville, says double the miles, double risk of injury. If injured on defense,
the reps, the practicality of
play took away from your offense.
That's what I'm thinking about. The practicality of doing it over a long period of time.
And remember,
he might be able to do it for a couple years while he's young.
He did an interview, I believe, with CBS Sports, where he said if an NFL team told him he had to focus on one position, that he would
quit. Right. And so he's got that mentality. He believes he can do it. And that is going to drive him, and it's going to put pressure on the team that drafts him to try to accommodate that, even if it may not be the best way to utilize him.
He played 713 snaps on offense and 748 on defense for Colorado last season.
Well, I will give it this. He's not, because they played a lot of snaps per game. I think he had probably averaged 80 snaps per game, somewhere around there.
It was incredible how,
Yeah,
how
80,
much he
90.
played.
But he has to, I think what he needs to understand, and maybe Deion Sanders has told him this, there's a different command on your body than, because in college you can float, you can freelance, nobody's really touching you. You know, you get the ball, you're the best athlete. So you get the ball, you're outrunning people, you can get down. And then on defense, ain't nobody throwing to your side, nobody's pressuring you, you know, and they're spreading you out as well. So, you know, it's a little bit easier to manage, I believe, at the college level, playing both sides of the ball. He did it, and he did it well, and it parlayed him into winning a Heisman. I just think in the NFL, it's going to be, if a team is smart. Listen, when I draft you, you know, you are just either our defensive back or our wide receiver, and we will play you a little bit depending on the game and the situation. But by no means are we drafting you to play 40 plays on offense and 40 plays on defense. No, we're not doing that.
According to ESPN, he led the FBS in both 2023 and 2024 in snaps, totaling 2,625, despite missing almost 5 games because of injury. Now, my very quick math, if I take the snaps he played on both sides of the ball last season, that's 1,461 divided by 13 games. He played roughly 112 snaps per game.
You can't, that's not 100 snaps per game. You're not going to get that. You get, you know, 40 snaps. So that you probably average out 80s. A game probably averages 80 something snaps, 90 snaps per game, offense, defense, if you put it together. And you figure he won't even play that many snaps. I mean, you can do it, but the only way you do it is the way Dallas did it with Deion Sanders. You let him be your primary defensive back, and we'll get some packages for you, and we'll throw you in there. You may get 12 plays per game, but those 12 plays are for you.
615-737-1025. By the way, Mike Borgonzi, Chad Bringer, and Brian Callahan are scheduled to address reporters before the draft at 1 o'clock. We will carry that news conference for you live. That's at 1 o'clock. 615-737-1025. We continue the conversation. Which draft pick is likeliest to make the Titans regret drafting Cam Ward? Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter or someone else? Let us know. 615-737-1025. It's time for the 4th annual 615 Open Charity Golf Tournament, benefiting Folds of Honor, presented by Gary Force Acura. Cromwell Media, along with partners Fox 17, Outfront Media, and Social Indoor, are proud to announce we will be back at Hermitage Golf Course on Thursday, May 29th, to make a difference while having a great time. You can join us and a few guest media members, athletes, and musicians as we raise money for Folds of Honor. Donations will go to provide life-changing scholarships to families of America's fallen or disabled military and first responders. Sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com.
All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto. Hey, look, inflation, higher costs, a lot of this uncertainty going on. It put some people in a stressful financial situation. You might have some credit card bills. The interest rates are going bonkers. But Loan Pronto wants you to know that their interest rates have plummeted, and it's time to call them because you have a way out. There is a way out for homeowners, and it's your home's equity. You can refinance out of a higher rate, do a home improvement project that you've been looking for, or simply take the cash from your home's equity and pay some bills in a matter of days. You'll be on better financial footing. You can have a much better monthly budget. It will save you money month to month. So check in with Loan Pronto, because if you're a homeowner, you probably have a lot of home equity stashed. You may not even be aware of it. So Loan Pronto has a lot of options that can help you get the financial freedom that you deserve. So do the smart thing and call Loan Pronto right now at 615-499-5780 or go to loanpronto.com online. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
and that is the quarterback Cam Ward. Look, Chase, this is such an easy one because he's the overwhelming favorite to go first overall. I understand that. But if Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter were actual franchise game changers in the way that a quarterback is, they would go number one. Of course. So Cam Ward's going number one because at the end of the day, and this has always been the case in the National Football League, quarterback is where it's at. It is the highest positional value, and it's not even close. I would suggest D-end, Abdul Carter, would be the second highest positional value. Chase, what's positional value? You put a premium on quarterback play. Think about the NFL today. There's probably 18 to 19 guys that these franchises probably trust to run their franchise for the next 5 years, not even decade. Okay? And the rest of them, the 10 to 12 other franchises, they're consistently turning over rocks to try and find that guy.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Cam Ward is the overwhelming favorite to be the number one pick.
Yeah.
It's because he has the arm talent. He has the it factor. He can make any throw out there, all the different arm angles, stuff like that. The Tennessee Titans, they have a lot of other holes than the quarterback. But what are they going to do? They're going to go out, they're going to draft a guy who's going to be the day one starter. And even if he's an inkling as good as what Jaden Daniels was or what Bo Nix was, they hit on a quarterback that they can build around. And so for me, it's always going to come down to positional value. And for Cam Ward, he's shown it. He's got the highest ceiling of the quarterbacks in the draft.
These are all.
That was Chase Daniel talking about Cam Ward versus Travis Hunter versus Abdul Carter as the number one overall pick. And he hammered on that point about positional value and that the quarterback position, of course, has the highest positional value. By the way, during the break, just because I was curious, I was looking up snap counts from last season because Travis Hunter played more than 1,400 combined snaps on both sides of the ball. The offensive leader in snaps outside of the quarterback position, by my very quick count here, thanks to fantasypros.com, was DJ Moore at 1,066. On defense, it was actually new Titans safety Xavier Woods with the Carolina Panthers. He played 1,218 snaps last season. So Cam Ward's total snaps would lead the NFL. No surprise. But as you said during the break, Derek, you have to consider the schedule, the caliber of competition. It's going to be much harder for someone like Travis Hunter to play both sides of the ball effectively at the NFL level.
And if GMs are being honest, and if his prior head coach, Deion Sanders, is being honest, these are the things that they need to be telling him. That, you know, they know how he felt after the season. He missed games because of injury. And they know how he felt after the season. They need to tell him it's going to be times that after every, 4 games. And how much of that, is taxing on your body. You can do it for possibly a season, if that. But then after that, how long do you think you're going to play this game and have an impact that you want to have if you continue to play on both sides of the ball with those high numbers? Like if you're averaging, 50 plays on offense and 50, that's just, it's cool to say, and it's probably even doable for a bit. And when I mean a bit, I'm talking about some games. I'm not talking about a whole season. I just, because he's going to find himself in that training room more times than not.
All right, let's go back to Ohtani. It was amazing what he did a couple years ago. The most incredible season in my mind that's ever been done. He pitched as a semi-regular in the pitching rotation, and he was phenomenal at the plate. But even in that year, he only made 28 starts. He had a 2.33 ERA. He won 15 games on the mound, and he threw 166 innings. That's really good, but that's still not like if you're pitching and you're a durable starter, you hope that the inning count is a little higher than that, and you hope a guy makes 33, 35 starts. So in his best year, that's the most starts he ever made in one year as a two-way player. And it was phenomenal. It's never been done. So that's the bar that we're setting for Travis Hunter. But once again, it's not quite as easy to pull off. And let's also note that what's the most games he played in a single college season. What's the most games Colorado played? 13?
He played 13 games last season.
Okay. So he plays minimum 17 games every year in the pros. And if his team ends up being what he wants it to be, there's then the postseason after that. We're not even counting the preseason.
Exactly.
And there are no preseason games in college.
No.
So that's what Steve Watterson used to always give the speech, right? He would say, hey, you're a rookie in this league. Let's just start with this. You are going to play way more football than you've ever played at one time. You have to have your body prepared. I just go back to the practicality of being able to do it at that level. It's such a hard thing to do.
Chol is on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Chol, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my thing is, if we're gonna drop a quarterback, let's just do it because we need a quarterback. When it comes to Travis Hunter, I think a couple months ago I saw something on YouTube. I think it was Champ Bailey and Sante Samuel, something like that. They were talking about Travis Hunter. And I think Champ Bailey was a cornerback or something like that, and he tried to play both positions. And he sat down with his family, and he said it was about the money. So you're going to be playing, these two positions. And if you want to play 2 years or you want to play 10 years. So he decided, the money, they don't pay you twice. They're not going to pay you $5 million a year, $4 million a year. No, it's the same thing. So, and then your body too going to break down. I think it's impossible when he get it and he getting it. I think it is not a big person, maybe weigh 170 pounds, and the pace of the game is not going to fit. He's going to figure it out. Maybe some team going to give him a play couple snaps, and then he's going to be on the sideline try to breathe, and he cannot get in. So I don't think it is impossible. That is mine. People obsessed with doing these. Be the first person do this. It's not going to work.
Thanks for the call, Chol.
So count him among the skeptics that you could pull it off. Of course, you could talk yourself into anything. I'm sure the Browns are thinking we got a plan. We're gonna get the best out of him for the longest time. But I go into can he buy in when he makes a comment like, "I'll quit the game if I'm not a two-way player." I think that's how a great athlete who's confident in himself should think. But can he, once he gets into that world and experiences it for a while, can he then realize this is the best thing for me and my team, that we find the happy medium, the right way to use his unique skill set creatively?
Listen, he's making a point here. And I just realized what he's saying. That he just wants I think he just wants the ability to play both sides. He's not saying that I want to be a starter on both sides. I hope that's not what he's saying, because that's what he was at Colorado. He was a starter on both sides. Now, Colorado ran 4 wides.
Does he get to pick which one that he's the main guy at, or do the Browns get to pick?
I think when you're drafting a guy and you've been talking to him long enough, you know where he fits. And I think the Browns, if indeed they do draft him, they may look at him as a wide receiver, because I think their defense is good enough. They'll start him on the wide receiver side first. Let's just put it that way. They'll start him at wide receiver first and see how that goes. If it goes well, that's where they would keep him. And if they came a pinch on defense, they will use him sparingly on defense, on third down, nickel packages, down packages. But if I think he goes anywhere else, I think you have to have that conversation on the front end. Listen, this is where we're going to start you. And if it's on defense, we will work you in on offense, but you're not going to be a primary, start on offense and defense. It's just not from a physicality standpoint. We talk about Champ Bailey and Charles Woodson. You know how many catches to combine they both had? 5 in their whole careers. 5 catches combined total in their whole illustrious Hall of Fame careers. Both of those guys who we looked at as sort of dual guys that can go, that did it in college some, and we folk can do it. They played a total of 5 snaps, both of them. So I think when we start to look at this, we look at, well, these, no, they didn't do it. They didn't, because Champ Bailey understood. One, they're only paying me to really do one job. My paycheck, they ain't gonna give me an extra 10 million
Right.
because, oh, you're playing. We're gonna give you 30 million at defensive back, but because you play wide receiver too, we're gonna add on another 20 million. No, they're not gonna do that. They're gonna pay you, if you are the starting wide receiver, they're gonna pay you right now 40 million. That's what you would be asking if you're the top wide receiver. If you're the top DB, you'd be asked for 31 million. 40 million, 31 million. I'm not great at math, but if I'm a dual threat athlete, which side am I leaning toward? The offensive side, where I can get paid. So to me, you are our number one wide receiver. If you go to Cleveland, you are our guy wide receiver. And we will spot duty you on the defensive side of the ball. That's where we will start first.
And where it could come in too, is the franchise tag. Remember years ago, Jimmy Graham, who was a premier pass catching tight end, wanted to be franchised, if I remember this correctly, as a wide receiver, because he's like, I'm a pass catcher. I should be paid like a wide receiver.
I line up outside just as much.
Right, and that was the argument. So I can see a player from the business side going, what if I'm franchise tagged? I want to be franchise tagged at the more premier position that gets paid more.
It's funny to look back at that. I found a story on this from 2014. In a groundbreaking decision, the NFL has confirmed that arbitrator Stephen Burbank denied Graham's request to officially be declared a wide receiver under the NFL's franchise tag rules. Although Graham lined up either in the slot or out wide on 67% of his snaps last year, Burbank agreed with the New Orleans Saints and the NFL Management Council, who argued that the tight end position has always involved a combination of splitting out wide to run pass routes and staying in to block, especially in today's modern passing offenses.
Wherever you spend the bulk of your time, that's where, especially when you get in situations like that, that's where they're going to say, well, hey, listen, your position says wide receiver. That's where you're starting. You're playing more snaps at wide receiver. So you're going to get paid as wide receiver. Same thing with Graham. Your title says tight end, and the way tight ends play now, you're flexed out wide and you're in a slot. That's what you are, a tight end. So we're going to pay you as a tight end. Plain and simple.
615-737-1025 will continue to take your reaction on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll also look ahead to the news conference featuring Chad Brinker, Mike Borgonzi, and Brian Callahan, which is scheduled to start at 1 o'clock. We will carry that live right here. But before we get to that, tune in to 1025 The Game today for Vanderbilt baseball as the Commodores face MTSU at Hawkins Field. Pre-game begins at 5:45 and first pitch is at 6. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app, and at theGameNashville.com. D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. This week's Nashville's best deal is Fog Street Lawn Club, Nashville's premier soccer pub and rooftop. Fog Street Lawn Club offers scrumptious bites, British lawn bowling, and premier soccer pub vibes. Get half off a $30 gift card now at theGameNashville.com/deals and dive into the ultimate rooftop experience. So roughly 15 minutes or so, I looked at my imaginary watch for some reason. I can't remember the last time I wore a watch, but I looked at my wrist like I had one on there. Anyway, 15 minutes from now, thereabouts, the Titans Brain Trust will address reporters at St. Thomas Sports Park about the NFL draft. We'll preview that in just a minute. Some more reaction on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com related to our topic about draft prospects who could make the Titans regret taking Cam Ward. Tommy says, I have a take. Travis Hunter will be just mediocre. He's way overhyped. And the only wide receiver he played ate his lunch. And Ted McMillan, who I assume is the receiver, isn't Jamar or Justin. He's going to find out the NFL is a different beast than the weak Pac-12.
Listen, I think he's going to be a good player. If the skill set translate to the NFL, he should, if he plays one side of the ball primarily. I think he's going to be really good at either position. I think he will excel because I just believe he's just a natural athlete. He has just been gifted with a skill set, that not many have. He's one of those guys that you could put him on a basketball court. You could have him a bat, probably had him a tennis racket, put him on a track field. He's going to excel. And there's not too many people, like that. Bo Jackson was one. Deion Sanders was probably another. Guys that if you just put them in the arena, and I'm sure Mookie Betts is one. You put these guys in any arena, they're going to find a way to excel. And I think, Travis will excel, but I think he will excel on one side of the ball or the other. It's not going to be where he's dominant on both sides.
And by the way, unless I'm looking at the wrong box score, Colorado beat Arizona 34-7 last season, and Ted McMillan had 5 receptions for 38 yards. So unless I'm looking at the wrong game, that doesn't scream Ted McMillan.
It might have been the year before. I don't know. But I don't think that game.
In 2023, Arizona beat Colorado 34-31.
And that's the game.
And Ted McMillan had 9 receptions for 107 yards and a touchdown.
That's the game.
But that was 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
Last season, Colorado ran Arizona off the field.
How old?
Well, he
was
played
Ted-
against.
How old was
yeah.
McMillan that year? Because Travis Hunter would have been a true
No,
freshman that year?
he was a
sophomore?
sophomore that year. Yeah, he was a sophomore.
Well,
that
Ted McMillan is 22 years old. So he would have been 20 or 21 during that game.
Yes.
I don't think he's overhyped. I think he is a very, very special talent.
Yeah.
Hunter. I don't think this is like a conjured up hype thing. I think he truly has the talent. The question is, what's the best way to use him?
Mhm.
And you can never predict the future on injuries, right? Especially with wear and tear.
And that's the big thing, not that he can't do it. It's but for how long? Are you going to, let this young man go out there and play both sides of the ball and risk not having him as he starts to get more games under his belt? Or do you want to judiciously just, sort of, I'm going to put him here, but I'm going to let him play on the other side sparingly. I'm going to work this thing out right. So it's giving him a little bit of what he wants, but it also protects the team and put the team in a good place where he's not wearing himself down each and every game.
One texter says something that I think we can all agree with by how bad this text is. I think Levis is the player that will make us regret taking Cam Ward. Number 1, we need to draft quarterback protection and receivers, and we will be a playoff/Super Bowl contender. Too many giving up on Will too quickly. That is from Pete. Pete, I appreciate your text. I'm willing to take that chance.
Listen, I said this off air. We could probably discuss this after listening to Borgonzi. at the 1 o'clock hour. But if I'm the Tennessee Titans, I'm trading Will Levis. I'm trying to trade him during the draft. There's no way I am entering. And I'm sort of going back on what I said about Will Levis, not from the standpoint of him being a good player. I think Will Levis is going to be, at least a backup in this league, because I think he has the tools to be a backup. He's a good player. He's just not starter worthy. But make no mistake, I've always said, well, Will Levis may come back, and if he's the only way he gets a starting job is if he's, the total opposite of what he was last year and he's developing. It's not even that no more. You can't open up camp with Will Levis on this roster. You cannot, because the minute you draft Cam Ward is the starter. Here's the starter. We're not looking for a young backup. No, we're not. We're not looking for someone to still think he can be a starter in this league. No, we're not in the business of developing 2 quarterbacks at the same time. That's why we went out and we got some veteran guys that are sort of they're in development stage, or they have been developed. We know what they are. They may have a little bit left, but we know exactly what they are. They are backup quarterbacks. Cam Ward is our guy. Will Levis, we will try to trade. Justin Fields got traded because they draft Caleb Williams, and they did not need to have him in the building. They didn't. They probably liked him as a person, but they couldn't have him in the building. I said years ago, Matt Hasselbeck needs to go because Jake Locker needs to know that this is his team. And they finally end up doing it. Now, Jake just didn't have the passion to play the position anymore. He chose to retire a little bit early. But when you draft a guy that high, that young, he needs to come in. Today's football, there need not be another guy behind him that thinks that they should be a young guy that thinks they need to be a starting quarterback in this league too. You're not in a position for that. Trade him away, get something for him. I think you will be able to get more than what you think, especially during the day of the draft. Now you ain't gonna get anything for him, for Will Levis. But come the day of the draft, I think you'll get more than what you thought.
We're going to talk about this in the coming days. Mark from Ashland City says, go back to 2023 and Cam Ward at Washington State shredded Colorado for what it's worth. Washington State won 56-14. Cam Ward accounted for 4 touchdowns, 2 through the air and 2 on the ground against the Buffaloes. But it's time soon to hear from Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi and Brian Callahan at the pre-draft news conference. That starts at roughly 1 o'clock. We will carry it for you live. I'm curious if anybody asks, how open is that door? Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker. Did you leave it ajar? Is it cracked? Is it all the way open? Who knows? But we will hear from them in just a matter of moments. We will carry that for you live. 615-737-1025. Let's go. Let's continue on our text line here as we wait for that. One texter talking about regretting drafting Cam Ward. One texter says Cam can only, I actually already read that text message, but I didn't actually read this text message. All of the other signed text messages look the same. Cam can only be as good as his offensive line will let him be. If he doesn't have the protection, they will hurt him just like they did Will Levis.
They're working on it.
Yeah.
Right. They hired Bill Callahan. They couldn't fix it in 1 year, but they made progress. So that's a Captain Obvious statement, I think. But it's not like they're ignoring this.
Mm-hmm.
It may not work. I don't know. They may have a bad offensive line again, but they have tried to address that.
Dustin from Hopkinsville, by the way, is calling it Will Levis to the Cleveland Browns. He's taking it to the bank, Dustin from Hopkinsville.
Hey,
Levis to the Browns.
You never. He has the big arm to throw through
but
the web.
But they already have Kenny Pickett,
and
Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
Yes.
He can
So
be
how
a
many
young Joe
quarterbacks
Flacco.
are they gonna, do they need?
He could be a young Joe Flacco. I don't know. Yeah. So what were you just talking? I was talking about Joe Flacco.
Yes.
The
offensive line?
The offensive
Yes.
line. Yeah, that's what we got to do. Here's going to be the interesting part because I was looking at this last night. yes, the Titans are doing what they need to do in trying to build up this offensive line. But I think here is going to be the potential blow up in all of this, because they're trying, and I get it, but this team is not in a position and a luxury to just be trying things. They got to know this is going to work. More, was it the offense and the quarterback, or was he just not that good of a left tackle? This guy, he didn't play well last year. So was it just a one-off? Was it Russell Wilson held the
You're
ball
talking
too
about
long?
Dan Moore.
Yeah, Dan Moore. Did Russell Wilson hold the ball too long in Pittsburgh? Why is it that he regressed last year as a left tackle? That's what we need to find out.
And maybe that's a question for Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi, who, along with Brian Callahan, will address reporters from St. Thomas Sports Park. Coming up next, 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. And we are proudly presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. Let's go to St. Thomas Sports Park for the Titans pre-draft news conference.
Staff and Brian Callahan and his staff for all the hard work they put in up to this point. We also want to thank the support staff has been involved. There's been a lot of change. We've changed a lot of things as far as our processes, our grading scale. So they've been through a lot, and I appreciate everybody's commitment to this process and being flexible and adapting to how we're moving forward. But there's a lot of work that's gone into this. We're well prepared. We're ready to go. Like I said back in January, we're going to be a draft and develop franchise, and this is our opportunity to really build the foundation of this football team through the draft, and the culture of our football team will run through the draft. So this is a big weekend for us. We're ready to go. We'll go ahead with questions at this time.
How much do you guys, with the picks you have and where you have them, do you think you can, how much of your roster issues can you solve with this draft?
Yeah, I think we have 8 picks. And, we're going to do as much as we can with those 8 picks. If they turn into more picks, we'll see how the draft goes and unfolds. But we certainly have a lot of needs in the team right now. So, we're going to do our best to, stay true to the board, draft the best player available, not really reach for needs at this point. But this is a big opportunity for this organization, really a tone setter, this draft. For the guys that we bring in here right now.
What have you guys learned about Cam over the last even several weeks that maybe you didn't know at the start of the process?
Well, I think we just got to meet the person, right? And got an opportunity to sit down with him multiple times, whether it be the combine, pro day, his private workout, got to meet his family. The competitive edge that he has, you can feel that talking with the kid. He's very intelligent. We've had him on the board several times with Brian. And just, the family. He comes from a great family as well.
If you guys do, in fact, take a quarterback, whether it's Cam, Shedeur, Dart, whoever, what do you feel you have in place to not ensure, but to make his path to success better than some of the previous quarterbacks within this organization?
I think one of the things unique to my journey in this profession is I've done it before too. I've been a part of a young quarterback, number 1 overall pick, coming into a team that picked number 1 for a reason, and we weren't good enough last year. So we're picking first, and we have a chance to add a really good player with the first overall pick, whatever it ends up being. But there is a lot of things that I learned from that first lesson of when you bring in a player like that, that'll help us in the process. So I think we've added the right players in free agency. I think we have good young players here. And we got to do a lot better job coaching first and foremost, and put ourselves in some better positions. So those things to me are all part of the equation. And I feel good about where we're at and where we're headed and how we're going to get there.
As you went through the process, you said at the Senior Bowl that the process had just begun and that, nobody had jumped to the forefront the way Joe Burrow did when you were in Cincinnati. Was there a key point in this whole thing where when you met with Ward, you said, this guy's got some of what we're looking for?
I think for me, it was to how Mike has explained it the whole time, is that there was a process to it. We went through all of it from start to finish. Our opportunities to meet with all the players that we met with are all critical points in the evaluation process. And we found ourselves with a really clear vision of what the draft board looks like for us at every position and every round for where we're at. So a ton of trust in Mike and how he went about it. It was really fun to watch those guys with Dave Ziegler and Reggie along with them. Put us in a great spot. And I think we're prepared. The work's been done. There was no particular point anywhere for any of these players that is an aha moment. It's a culmination of all the data points you get and a culmination of all the film and the opportunities to meet and greet all these guys. We brought 30 players in on top of it from around college football. And we've had, our coaches have been busy with Zooms and we've done all the work we can do on as many players as possible. So I think that's at the end game is what we were hoping for, is to run a very disciplined process. And I commend Mike and Chad and those guys in the front office for leading that. It's been a lot of fun to watch.
Throughout this process, you've talked about your desire to have like 9 or 10 picks each year, ideally, and also to try to get back into the top 100 if at all possible. If you are forced into a situation where you kind of have to choose between those two ideas, what's more important to you in this draft?
Well, I think just having a strategy, and that's really what we've been doing here the last week or so, just working the board horizontally and just seeing the value of each position group. And I think that's how you have to base the decision on. If there's a player there at a certain spot and we think it's the best value for us, we're going to take that player. But if we deem there's a cluster of players on that board that we kind of have the same value on, then maybe we move back and pick up a pick. But I think it really depends on how the board falls. But really the preparation we've put in the last couple of weeks, just working the board horizontally and just seeing where the value lies at certain pockets of the board will come into play there.
How many conversations have you had about the 35th pick in particular, and maybe your list of guys that you would say, if he's here, it's going to be a hard decision to move off of this pick?
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of the strategy. We've had those conversations here, especially over the last week. Chad, Brian, myself, Reggie, Dave, we've gone through the whole thing. And that's part of it. You have to be prepared at a certain point. If these players are on the board, if there's a few players that are there, do we not move and take that player? Or are there a few players there that we can move back and maybe pick up a pick? So those conversations have been ongoing here the last week or so.
I guess at pick, 2 days out, is it safe to say you know who you're picking at 1? And if so, what would it take to maybe change your mind at this point?
Yeah, we've come to a consensus. The entire organization is to stay at that pick. And I guess you'll find out Thursday night who we pick.
Did you have a lot of offers or a lot of interest from other teams?
There was interest. Yeah, I thought that was, doing our due diligence and going through the process to listen to those offers. And there were. I don't want to go into specifics of what the offer was or what the teams were, but there were offers.
At what point did you guys come to that consensus?
It's such a long process here, and we wanted to go through the whole thing. I don't know if there was a certain point along the process, but we were listening the whole time. And then, as we got towards the end of the process, we decided as an organization we're going to stay.
Chad, you brought Dave in here obviously a couple of months ago. What's it been like to kind of watch him work, and what have we maybe learned about him through this process?
Yeah, you're speaking of Mike.
Right.
Yeah, Mike. I think he's been really impressive in how thorough he's been. The discipline he has had throughout this entire process. This takes me back to how I grew up in this business, and I think the really cool thing about he and I is we were trained very similarly. But at the same time, we came to this with different ideas, core principles that we believe in, but also different ideas on how to approach things. And when you get in that room, we've had a lot of really good conversations. There's been a lot of late nights together, and sometimes we don't always see the player exactly the same, but we let the process to work through that, with all of us understanding that we're trying to make the best decision for the Tennessee Titans. And if you keep that in mind, you can work through that with coach and everybody that's been involved in this. It's just been really fun. Not only Mike, but also Dave and Reggie coming in. There was a night I was sitting there and I looked around the room. These guys don't know it, but I was just thinking about wow, this is between the four of us in this room right now, there's 9 Super Bowls. We've all been part of winning championships in our careers. We know what winning football looks like. Coach as well, he's won a Super Bowl, so you've seen what that looked like. And it just seems like as of today, we got the first pick in the draft. We couldn't be any further away from where we want to be. But this is the beginning of it. If you're a true personnel man, this is what you want. You want the opportunity to really build a team from the ground up, and Mike's getting every opportunity to do that, and I know he's excited about it.
For both of you, Mike, you said you want to be directed by need, but there's clearly not a top number 1 edge rusher on this team. You're clearly thin at wide receiver. How are you not directed by need, given those 2 key positions and where you're staying?
Yeah, and that's part of staying true to the board. I think you try to marry up the need with the value too. You never want to force a need in the draft. And for us, we do have a lot of needs, so I think it's important for us to stay true to the board and really take the best available player, at that pick. But for us, like I said, we don't want to force needs here and force a pick based on that.
Chad, you spin it back to.
You're thinking on that?
What's that?
On needs, not directing you at those two positions?
Yeah, I think, I feel the same way. I mean, you want to take the best player available. Everybody says that. Not everybody follows that. The times in my career where I've seen we've made mistakes, either earlier in my career to even some of my mentors, when you kind of reach on a player based off need. Like Mike just said, I mean, we got a lot of needs. So we're just going to trust the process. We're going to trust the board. We're going to let the board talk to us. The work has been done. We're prepared. Now, the draft is unpredictable at times, and I know we're picking at the top, so maybe a little bit more of an understanding of who might be there, who might not be there. But at the same time, we're prepared for whatever comes at us, and we just got to take the best player.
Chad, if you spin it back to Miami's pro day, Cam, he rolls out, throws to Restrepo, and he says to you guys, I solidified it. What does that say about his confidence, and how much did that kind of resonate with you that he, in the middle of the workout, took the time to send that message?
Yeah, I think you got to get to know Cam to understand that, his personality. I think we enjoyed it. It was a cool moment. Cam's he's confident. I wouldn't say he's cocky. I think there's a fine line between the two, and he carries himself the right way. I just appreciate the way he approaches the game, his competitiveness, and just the way he plays the game with a quiet mind and the confidence that he has. I think that's been impressive.
With the needs that you guys have as being so many, and you're kind of bottom heavy in terms of 6 or 8 picks or day 3, can you find immediate starters with day 3 picks out of this draft?
Well, I think that's part of projecting players, and that's really where the scouting really comes into play. When you're in those middle rounds to late rounds, and can you project players to be starters eventually? So I think it can be done. In the past, I'm sure Chad's gone through the same thing in Green Bay. We've picked players in 6th, 7th round that have turned into starters. So that's part of the scouting process, is try to project players that can, some of these guys later rounds, do they have traits to be starters? So that's a big part of the process for us, is identifying those players that someday could become starters, even though they're drafted in these later rounds.
So how do you lay the premium on players that are ready to play now versus players that might have those traits 2-3 years down the line?
Well, you're trying to take the best. The part of the draft process is projecting, like 2-3 years from now, and what they're going to be. So for us, we're trying to take, what's this player going to look like in year 2 or 3? And that's really where I think the good teams separate themselves in these later rounds, when you're really digging on this talent and you're really trying to find, what are the certain traits that are going to project this guy to one day be a contributor or a starter at that level.
Brian, this is for you, and if you guys want to chime in, go ahead. But when it comes to going through this process in dissecting these quarterbacks, how much did Cam Ward, going through the places he went to with 3 different offensive coordinators and being able to really catch on quickly to each system, how does that come into play when you are deciding if he could be right for your
I think he's had a unique journey. I think the landscape of college football has changed in the last handful of years with the amount of opportunity guys have to transfer. I think there's a world now where there's some players that you see nowadays that maybe 10 years ago you might not have ever heard of them. And I think the opportunities for these guys, because of the way the transfers work, especially the quarterback position, because only one guy gets to play. And these guys have had unique journeys, Cam in particular, to get to where they are, because they've had to learn new teammates and new locker rooms and new systems. All those things factor into it. So there's a little bit less guesswork when it comes to their ability to learn, their ability to assimilate into a locker room, their ability to get along with coaches and to take coaching. And now we also, in Cam's particular case, you got 3 schools worth of people you can talk to, as opposed to 1. And there's a lot of different opinions that get had. And you get coaches that had him when he was 18, and you get coaches that now had him in his last season. So I think it's actually really a benefit for some of these quarterbacks, because they eventually enter into a lot of the challenges they enter into when they come to the NFL. because they're learning something new. They're learning new people, new faces, a new way of doing things, whether it's a college or an NFL team. So I think a lot of these guys do have some advantage in that nowadays, even though I know it's not what everybody likes to hear. But there is something about that process that allows you to get a fuller picture for who they are as a person and how they learn and their ability to navigate change.
Brian, I think you referenced at the combine that you guys might be interested in another running back, maybe a different type running back. I guess I can see how you would want a different, size player perhaps, but is there generally room for a three-back rotation on most teams, do you think?
Yeah, I think you have to have three good backs nowadays. Injury is always a part of it too. It's a violent position. Those guys take a lot of hits. They take a pretty good beating on a week-to-week basis. And so you're trying to stay as fresh as possible for as long as possible. There is guys that can carry the load and do that on their own, and there's some good ones out there. But I think there's also a place for a division of labor and shared workloads, and it keeps guys fresher longer. So yeah, there's definitely room for three backs. You can find all kinds of ways to use those players. I thought both Tony and Tajay had really pretty good seasons from top to bottom. We're looking for more, I think, at the end of the day. But there's a style of runner that you'd love to add, but I think just having another good third back and the special teams role for the third back as well. I thought Julius Chestnut did some nice things in a limited sample size, but we're looking to keep adding competition and keep adding players to that room, and hopefully we can find the three best ones come September.
Mike, if you were to trade a veteran on your roster during this draft, you feel like you'd need 2 picks back in order not to be in a situation where you're just using one of your picks to replace the player you trade and kind of coming out with a wash in terms of number?
Say it again.
If you traded player X and only got 1 pick back, odds are you'd be using one of your picks to replace player X and you wouldn't be coming out ahead numerically. You feel like if you traded player X, you'd want to be getting 2 picks back in a deal most likely?
It depends. I mean, depends on the player, I guess. And we really haven't gone through that and thought about that right now. But I guess it depends on the value of the player and what you have. What you have is the value for the player and what you want back for that player as well. So it really just depends on who the player would be.
How much, Mike, do you feel like what you guys were able to do in free agency helped give you some flexibility here in the draft, or how much did free agency maybe dictate what you'll do here?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're going through these, the free agent process and the draft, you're trying to, fill holes and needs in the roster. So, I think where we started out, and I think we prioritized the offensive line, and adding Dan and Kevin there, and then like I said, we want to work on both sides of the ball, offense and defensive side of the line of scrimmage, and then getting Draymond in there as another rusher in there, has some versatility. We added some, a linebacker, back end player. So I think it does give you a little flexibility as you head into the draft and just how many holes you really have to fill.
We've talked at length about quarterback and receiver and edge because those are the obvious needs. When you look at your roster, what position aren't we talking about?
Well, like I said, we have a lot of needs on the roster right now, and I think that does a disservice right now. There's 31 other teams in the league right now trying to figure out other teams' needs. We just met with our pro department the other day to go over team needs, and during the draft, we have a team needs thing as we go through the draft. That's part of the strategy. So I think at this point of the draft, it would do us a disservice really to identify the exact needs that we have on the roster.
How important do you think, like for you, Mike, having been in Kansas City, Andy Reid's been there forever. How important is that stability to being able to develop a quarterback and set him up for success?
I think it's very important. Just having that environment and stability around him, coaches, front office, I've seen it done before. So I think that's a vital process. A part of the process is to have, that environment and stability for that player. I saw it, with Andy, with Patrick, and saw how that worked. And same thing with Brian, with Joe. So I think that's a big part of it.
How critical will it be for you guys together to be able to have that if you were to select a quarterback first?
Yeah, no, I think that's very important. And, and having a plan for the quarterback as well, as we've discussed, amongst Brian and Chad, and what is the plan for the quarterback, and having stability there and creating an environment for that player to succeed is all part of it. Sometimes you have to help these players along, and that's what coaching's here for, and that's what front office is here for, to provide an environment for them to succeed.
Where does Levis stand in that?
Yeah, Will is a quarterback in our room, and he's still developing. He's a young quarterback. He's had some good moments, and like any other young quarterback, they're continuing to develop.
Right. When you've got a quarterback who makes plays off script, a lot of different arm angles, is it a tricky balance to figure out what you might need to coach and what you might not?
That's a tricky question. I think there's definitely the element of, guys have unique traits, and you try your best to not interfere with those. I don't want to do something that's going to take away what makes a player great, what their edge is. There's also a way that you have to play the position a lot, not all the time, but a lot of the time in the NFL that does lead to success. There's an efficiency part of it that matters, but when it's time to put the cape on and go be Superman, you see the guys around the league that all do it. And there's a lot of them that can make those big plays and big moments. And you want the quarterback to feel comfortable when it's time to make those types of plays or take those types of risks, or make a tight window throw, that they have the green light and the confidence from us that it's okay to do it. And that's all a part of the development. And there's things that they'll make some bad decisions as a young player, and you got to correct them. And then they're going to make plays that are remarkable, and we're all going to be excited about watching it. I know there was definitely moments for me as you watch quarterbacks around the league, and you just know that the coach is over on the sideline going, like, throw it away, throw it away, throw it away. And all of a sudden they make an unbelievable play. And that's what makes the players in this league. And you don't want to take that away from them. But there's a balance between teaching the situation in a moment, and when is probably the right time for it, and when maybe we can throw the ball away or check the ball down. So it's a balance, certainly. And guys earn the right to do that and earn the trust to do that when they make those decisions. And make the plays when those things matter. To me, it's over time you earn the right to do that. And sometimes it's terrifying as a coach, and that's more of a me problem than it is a them problem. So there is a balance though, and there's a line that which you got to be mindful of, but you certainly don't want to take what's special about a player away from them.
There's been a lot of talk through this process about where this group of quarterbacks ranks maybe compared to other years. You see a Superman that you talk about in this group?
Yeah, I think there's some interesting players in the class from top to bottom, truthfully. But yeah, I think there's some guys that have shown over their college careers that they can do a lot of really special things. And I think, it's your guys' job to talk about classes and comparisons and all those things. And we look at what's right in front of us for the year and for that class. And I think we feel like it probably isn't as bad of a class as it's getting made out to be from top to bottom. I think some of these guys will end up being pretty solid players, and I think a few of them can end up being really good. So I feel confident in our evaluation of it.
Along with that evaluation for all you guys, you talked about the touch points in this process. It's well documented. You've basically seen Cam at every touch point you could have. You canceled the last workout with Shedeur. Is that about finding every little thing out about a guy, or is it more about maybe confirming what you already think you know?
Well, yeah, I think it's about finding out every little thing that you can find out. And at certain times in the process where we figured out, whether it's a physical ability that you evaluate on tape, or it's something with the intangibles in the person. And once you spend enough time with a player, you kind of figure out, okay, we've come to this decision. So for us, we took every, they call them touch points along the way. And, not only you watch them, throw live at some points, you're also sitting down with them and going through, X's and O's and figuring out the intelligence piece. But I think that's why we go through the whole thing. But there at some point we're like, okay, we've answered the questions here.
You said you know what you're doing with number one and you're not dealing. So with regard to phone calls from other teams, would you say don't bother?
Yes, at this point, yes.
Did you guys use all 30 of your 30 visits, and what was maybe the philosophy and how you wanted to use those, what you wanted to find out? Some of it medical, some personality, some digging deeper on guys. How did you maybe attack those 30 visits?
Yeah, it depends on each player. Like you said, some of it's medical stuff, some of it's X's and O's on the board. So every player that we bring in is really for a reason, to try to get questions answered. So as we went through that, bringing in those 30 players and identifying those people that we wanted in there, I think we had just questions, to get answered. And that's part of it. When you bring them in the building, they have an opportunity to really meet with everybody in the building.
When it comes to visits, I guess judging from the reported visit, looks like you had a lot of interest in D linemen. You guys have Simmons and Sweat and Sebastian in there. Do you still feel like that's a significant priority to add to the roster?
I think we need to add depth across the whole entire roster. It just happened to be that position group that we brought some players in that maybe we had some more questions on as we went through the process, but it certainly wasn't we were targeting a certain position. It was just identifying players on the board that we need to spend more time with, really.
How difficult to find inline tight end that can do everything you'd like out of a lead tight end?
Yeah, I think as the game has evolved, there's less really true wide tight ends, blockers, and the guys who can do both combo guys is unique at this time. But there's certainly guys out there that can still do it. Like I said, as the game's evolved, some of these tight ends have really turned into big receivers in the slot at times. So to find a tight end that can actually, line up, block in line, and do something in the pass game, it's probably a little bit less than it was years before.
Brian, give me your background working with quarterbacks. If you guys do take a quarterback, is there added pressure or responsibility that you feel to develop and make sure this thing goes right, and why or why not?
Oh, no added pressure. I think the old adage is, pressure is a bit of a privilege. You get a chance to work with a great player when you pick him at the top of the draft. So happens to be a quarterback, and that doesn't change anything for me. How I go about my job, what I do on a day-to-day basis, what I believe about the development of the position. None of that changes. It's exciting. It's what you hope for. I mean, it's what you want as a coach. Is you want those type of players on your roster. You want to coach them. You want to be a part of that journey. I've been fortunate to be a part of a few of them. It's exciting, and so there's nothing added to what already is the job. That's just part of it, and I'm fully aware of the expectation that comes along with that, and I embrace it. I'm excited for that to happen.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
I didn't know if you caught Cam's Fortnite appearance and everything he had to say about the football team.
No.
Your favorite coach, Tony and Tajir, two of the top 5 running backs in the league, and Calvin's premier wide receiver.
Yeah, I think you got to learn something about Cam. Cam's a smart person. I think he knows. I think he's got an awareness of his audience. Sounds like.
Chad, you talked a little bit about Dave and Reggie earlier. How did you use their strengths maybe in this process and divvy up maybe the responsibilities?
Yeah, I thought it was important when we were building the staff back in January when Mike and I got together, obviously hire Mike, and then looking at how we're going to build the front office. It was important to get some people in there with real experience. Has been in this league for a long time that come from, we're trained the way both Mike and I were trained as we come through this. So Reggie and I worked together in Green Bay. He's been in a position before as a general manager going into a really tough situation out in Oakland at the time. He had a top 5 pick. He took, I think, Khalil Mack, 5th overall at the time. Dave Ziegler is a good friend of Mike's. I've known Dave for a long time. He did a lot of good things there in New England when he was there. He's been a general manager before. He's picked in the top 10 before. Just being able to have some guys in the room, and even Dave. Dave didn't grow up in our system or our process, so it's actually kind of good because he's bringing some good ideas to what we're doing. Because a lot of times Mike and I kind of see things very similar. And even Reggie for that matter, but Dave will come with a different perspective, and it causes us all to discuss it, go through it, watch it again, which has been really helpful to us. So having that type of experience in the room has been invaluable to us.
Chad, I'm curious, where are you guys at with the L'Jarius Sneed situation? I mean, you were here,
Yeah.
so I would imagine it's something that you knew about back in December.
Well, we put a statement out on that. I don't think there's anything that I can add at this point regarding L'Jarius to what you're referring to.
Mike, when it comes to the draft process and maybe a player who has some character issues from the college time, what's your philosophy in how you look at those guys and how you evaluate if they would still be a fit in this organization?
Well, I think the biggest thing you have to really determine is, have they learned from their mistakes? I think these guys are all, the young players, and we've all made certain mistakes in our lives. But really to try to, figure out, have they really learned from their prior mistakes, and are they a good person? Are they going to be good in the community? So, that there are players that do have some past issues that you really have to work through. And you just have to figure out, have they really learned from those mistakes?
Last question.
When you
Chad,
when
you
you bring
talked
in a
about-
quarterback, a young quarterback, how much in the draft thinking is there an idea? You've obviously done it on the offensive line with the veterans. How much in the draft thinking is there? We need to surround him or give him better people on this side of the ball to accelerate his growth. And will that be something that you guys are thinking about with the other pick?
Yeah, like I said, you want to surround the young quarterback with as much, talent and have the environment for him to succeed. But at the same time, we're building a team here too as well. So, we have to do what's best for the team at that point. Of course, we, would like to go out and give that player everything he needs. But, our thinking is right now there's a lot of holes in this roster, and, we have to make the best decision for the team in terms of value of that player.
Chad, you've talked about the evaluation sort of model shifting for the organization, getting everybody on this new model, scouts, et cetera. What are you hoping that this new evaluation process will bring to the Titans on draft night that wasn't here before, and how you look at players?
Yeah, I think, we're going into the draft this weekend, just trying to find really good football players. We need more of them. And we're excited to head into this and see what falls in our laps here and go from there. I mean, we just want high character guys, locker room guys, culture guys. Obviously, Mike and I come from, and even Brian, more of a trait-based system. We want height, weight, speed. We want physicality. We want toughness. We want smarts. We want instincts. We want it all. I think this process that we've gone through is rigorous. It's detailed. No stone has been left unturned. Doesn't mean we're going to be perfect. Doesn't mean we're going to get them all right. But, like I was told a long time ago, you're not going to get all of them right, but just get the ones right that walk in through your doors on Sunday. So that's our goal, is try to hit on every single one of them. I mean, we're excited about where we're at. We're well prepared. We're ready to go. And, I'm excited about, the process that we've been through so far.
We will react to what we just heard from Chad Brinker, Mike Borgonzi, and Brian Callahan. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Where does Levis stand in that?
Yeah, Will is, a quarterback, in our room, and, he's still developing. He's a young quarterback. He's had some good moments, and like any other young quarterback, they're continuing to develop.
Will is a quarterback. He's a human being who lives and breathes. He likes mayonnaise.
He's young compared to the three of us.
Yes. And he has an arm that he can throw the football with.
That got a chuckle out of Derek Mason.
Yeah.
Quickly, the most newsworthy topic. The Titans are staying at 1. Don't bother calling, which I heard plenty of when I was younger. Don't bother calling. What did you guys not hear that you wish you would have heard? Or what was something that was asked that you wished, or that wasn't asked, that you wished was asked in that news conference quickly?
I would have tried a line of questioning that had to do with the current state of certain players on the roster, because I think that is related to who they will draft this weekend. For example, instead of, I think you got the predictable answer on the Snead situation.
Yeah.
They're not going to comment on an ongoing situation that hasn't changed really since December. It just has come to light. But I would have loved to have heard a health update on him. How is his rehab, or how is his physical therapy going? Do you expect him ready to go at some point during the offseason? Is he going to be a full go to start the regular season? Because if not, that could affect who you draft. And you could go down the list of other guys as well about the state of their health going into the season. But in particular, Snead.
That's what I would have liked to hear. And I know TD was trying to press it a bit and see if they would, give, an answer outside of, what they've already given. But, the health is, I think they would have dove a little bit deeper into that. And maybe they would have gave you an inkling of what they were thinking in regards to his potential legal situations that may be coming up. So that's the one thing I did want to hear, like the health of the team and where do he expect starters like Snead to be health-wise.
615-737-1025. You can react as well on our phone and text lines.
Okay, so let's quickly hit the Levis thing though, because they've signed the other two guys, right? So there wasn't a drill down, a follow-up of, okay, look, if you draft a quarterback, which everybody in the room knows they are, based on that press conference, that's 4 quarterbacks. So you don't go into camp with 3 veteran quarterbacks. That's very unorthodox to do that, right?
He has to be traded.
But I would have loved to see if I could get a little bit more insight there.
Yeah, but it was just funny when the question was asked. It was almost like, oh, I didn't know you were. It was sort of like the Traylon Burks thing.
He was a little caught off guard.
Traylon's, he's had surgery. Yeah, Well, you should have told us that. It was almost like you really didn't expect anyone to ask anything about a quarterback you drafted 2 years ago, and you're about to get ready to draft another one first overall. It was almost like, oh, we didn't have an answer for Will Levis. We didn't. And you said something generic that you asked ChatGPT about Will Levis, and that's what they spit out.
Jared Stillman will join us coming up next to react as well. 615-737-1025. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen, 1025-1063 The Game.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time now. If you have set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting some type of goal to shed some extra pounds only to come up disappointed. But listen, I got some solutions here, because if you go to my good friends over at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team, see, they understand the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
if you guys do take a quarterback, is there added pressure or responsibility that you feel to develop and make sure this thing goes right, and why or why not?
Oh, no added pressure. I think the old adage is, pressure is a bit of privilege. You get a chance to work with a great player when you pick him at the top of the draft. So happens to be a quarterback, and that doesn't change anything for me. How I go about my job, what I do on a day-to-day basis, what I believe about the development of the position. None of that changes. It's exciting. It's what you hope for. I mean, it's what you want as a coach. Is you want those types of players on your roster. You want to coach them. You want to be a part of that journey. I've been fortunate to be a part of a few of them. It's exciting, and so there's nothing added to what already is the job. That's just part of it, and I'm fully aware of the expectation that comes along with that, and I embrace it. I'm excited for that to happen.
That was Brian Callahan just now at St. Thomas Sports Park as the NFL draft approaches on Thursday. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, joined by a man who apparently never had Dijon mustard until today, which is something we'll have to unpack at another time. Jared Stillman joins us as we prepare for Stillman and Company. So, Jared, your instant reaction, your takeaway from that news conference you heard today.
Yeah, I didn't say I've never had Dijon mustard. I'm just late to the party on that. Dijon is a fabulous condiment, but I'm not sure I'd say it's the best available condiment if I had to rank them. Sounds like the Titans on their board, and I haven't seen this on a lot of other boards, but it sounds like on the Titans board, Cam Ward is the best player available because Chad Brinker said he was the best player available. Mike Borgonzi said you had to stay true to the board. They talked about consensus and the process and everything else, but if they're going to stay true to their board, they have the first pick. I guess that means Cam Ward's number one on the board, right?
I'm imagining when they talk about the board talking to us, I'm imagining the three of them at a slumber party with a Ouija board. They all have their hands on it, and it's C-A-M-W-A. It's speaking to them, Cam Ward. But when the report surfaced earlier today, Jared, that the Titans were locked in at number one, I imagine you weren't thrilled with that.
Well, I mean, I wasn't surprised. Were you guys surprised?
No, not at all.
Those reports came out. I mean, the biggest thing about the report coming out for me and Rappaport that the Titans were locked in at number one and that they were going to take Cam Ward was it told me, okay, this is where this front office is going to go with their news and gossip. They're going to go to Rappaport. So, the way Vrabel used to always go to Rossini and you could pick up the context clues there, the most newsworthy item from the Rappaport report was not the actual report itself, but it was, okay, so this is who the Titans, at least for right now, this front office, this is who they're going with their gossip, because they clearly went to Rappaport and not Schefter and not Rossini and not any of the other ones. So that to me was the most telling thing. I mean, we've known for a month and a half that Cam Ward was going to be the pick. If you didn't know when they didn't pursue any quarterback in free agency, that you probably didn't understand how the NFL worked. And then, I mean, when they canceled the pro day with Shedeur Sanders, they had their mind made up. Easton Freeze at A to Z reported about 3-4 weeks ago, Amy Adams Strunk went on the trip to the Cam Ward private workout. Like, this has been done. And I wouldn't say that anything today surprised me in that regard.
But Jared, are you surprised to hear that it sounded like they didn't even really shop the pick around? I think you and I see eye to eye that, to me, that's what they should have done to see what the value of that pick was. I guess they were that much enamored with Cam Ward that it sounds like they didn't really put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah, I think Mike Borgonzi missed a real opportunity today if he's trying to sell Cam Ward, because that would have been the opportunity to say, well, hey, people called and we had great offers, but we just absolutely love this pick. And they didn't do that. It was kind of like, yeah, we had some discussions, but no, we've decided we're going to take Cam.
But isn't that where you want to be? Because I've said all along.
That's what I'm saying. Instead of saying we had some discussions. Again, if you're trying to sell this pick, which everybody outside of Nashville, this is like Will Levis. This time last year, everybody in Nashville was like, Will Levis is going to be a franchise quarterback. And the rest of the country was like, yeah, Will Levis kind of sucks. Outside of Nashville, it feels the sentiment is that the Titans are reaching by taking Cam Ward, right or wrong. if you're Borgonzi and you're trying to sell this pick, I mean, the thing to say would be like, hey, we had a lot of people that had a lot of interest, but that's how much we believe in the player we're going to take on Thursday night. I would say it right now, like, we just love the guy we're going to take. And instead it was like, well, we had some offers and it didn't seem very emphatic, if that makes any sense.
The conversation will continue coming up next on Stillman and Company. That will do it for us today. We will be back tomorrow at 11. Jared, take it away.
Be loved, love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful Tuesday. Peace.